People are going to say, well, duh, of course I'm ready to have, these are resentments, these are defects, these are things that are holding me back. Of course, anybody in their right mind would be willing to have these things relieved from them. Don't be so stupid.
Right. So today we're going to give them tools on how to stop renting your resentments space in your head. Join
Real
us.
life for real families. Hurts, habits, and hang-ups happen in every family.
Jerry and I are here with tools to help you trust God, clean house, and tell the truth to ramp up the joy in your family.
You have what it takes.
It's time to become sober on purpose
For his purpose.
His resentments is taking more podcasts than we thought because it's a very important topic. And we're looking at, once you've identified resentments, how do you actually deal with them?
Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, how I actually deal with them is the first thing I have to do is I have to, like we talked about ad nauseum in the previous episode, was I really need to quantify them, put parameters on them, write it down, identify specifically what I'm resentful at. I also like to then try and expand on that a little bit and say, why am I resentful? Now, in my experience, my resentments are almost always because somebody has done something to me or some institution has done something to me which threatens my social standing, my wallet, or my sex life. And then I try and identify why, and it could be more than one thing, you know what I mean? It could be they threaten all of those with this one particular action or inaction. Quantify that in my list as well.
And so you write all those down. I'm still kind of struggling with quantify. I would say you define all of those on your list. So you have to actually, this is actually a writing exercise.
That's better adjective.
But this is actually a writing exercise to do. And you don't do all of them at once, do you? Or do you just pick one situation?
No, I try and, if I'm going to sit down and do some of this courageous introspection, I mean, first of all, it's exhausting. And second of all, if I'm going to actually get focused to that point, I'm going to go for as long as I can. You don't have to. I've known people who've done this process who take a long time. The problem is most people put this off and put it off and put it off and put it off until it's no longer a priority. It's better to do a bad job at this, in my experience, than to do no job at this.
That's a good piece of advice. So this is a Nike commercial for just do it. Even if you think you're doing it wrong, pick out one resentment or several resentments, write about it. And what would they write?
The specific person who I'm resentful for. You know, again, we talked about in the previous episode, it may seem like I'm resentful at the United States government, but more specifically, I could probably boil that down and get more focused, break that up into 12 or 15 different specific individuals that I'm resentful. Then why am I resentful? So in other words, why? Because Governor Kaepernick voted no on the Right to Life Amendment or something. That's why. The last thing I would make sure to try and cover is, why does that affect me personally? Does that affect me because it's bad for the social cohesion of the community that Governor Kaepernick voted no on that thing? But that's kind of an altruistic, oh, well, I've removed myself from the specifics of it because social cohesion doesn't really, I'm part of the society, absolutely. But it affects me because, darn it, I wanted him to vote the other way, and I thought that was going to be best. And it makes me mad. Governor Kaepernick does not respect my opinion on this, and obviously my opinion's the right. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about ego here. It hurts my ego.
You're defining it, you're writing it down, and then what are you going to do with it?
I would try and get as many of those things out as I could in one shot and do this as a process rather than I'm going to address the first thing. I'm going to try and get as many of these things dealt with at once as possible. So if I'm at this step, I'm going to go through my life up to this point and hammer out as many of these things and define them and write it down as I can in one shot.
So a lot of the point of this is to stop carrying around this baggage that we don't need to carry and to stop renting these feelings space so that we won't get triggered the next time it happens.
Right. The reality is we can just stop caring about this. We can just let it go. I mean, there are people out there who can do that. Go and be well, my Christian brother. You know, God has forgiven you. You are a new creation. bada bing. I have not found that trick yet. For me, it's a process, and it takes a lot of emotional energy to pull it off. So the first thing I would do is I would define as many resentments as I could in the way that we just outlined.
Mm-hmm. And then?
And then I would sit down with somebody who I respect emotionally and intellectually, and like somebody who I can trust to be pretty tight-lipped about it. And I would ask them, I would say, hey, I got this list of things I was hoping you could just hear me out on, and maybe you could check my thinking on this and see maybe what you feel, anyway, just prepare them to sit down with me and have a confidential conversation, or more specifically, a one-way, gripe session where I lay out this list that I've compiled.
And this person, in my experience, is neither judging nor trying to fix anything. They are just listening to us saying it out loud.
Yeah, and in my experience, it's probably pretty important that they be the same sex, that they have suffered with similar challenges in life that I've suffered with, have come to a point of emotional understanding that they are stable emotionally, and therefore have a demeanor that a portion of their character that I want to try and integrate into my personality.
So I'm going to speed you along. I know it's not a quick process, but so you've talked to this person, you've shared all these resentments, then what are you going to do?
I'm going to try and get the courage to be okay with having these things relieved from me. Because as odd as it may sound, I'm invested in these things. They're part of who I am.
And that's what we talked about in the first episode on resentments, which you'll need to go back and listen to episode 3, is we get invested in these and they become our personality. So it does take courage to let them go, to stop renting them space, and to sometimes live in the tension of maybe it's never going to be right, but we can let it go enough. We're not constantly focused on it, or it doesn't trigger us every time somebody steps on our tail in that way. We're getting the courage to let it go, and then...
And I want to hammer on this one a little bit harder, because I think you're probably going to have, out of our tens of thousands of download people are going to say, well, duh, of course I'm ready to have... These are resentments, these are defects, these are things that are holding me back. Of course. Anybody in their right mind would be willing to have these things relieved from them. Don't be so stupid. And the reason I bring that up is because the first time I went through this process, that's exactly how I felt about it. And I said, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Of course I want these things. But then as I continued to grow emotionally and use these tools more and more, I realized, no, this is where the rubber meets the road. The willingness is so difficult. If I'm emotionally immature and this process is new to me, of course I'm willing, of course. But no, not really, because these are parts of my being. These are who I am, and I'm asking, my Creator, or I'm asking, my higher power to go and take these away. That is not an easy thing. I can half-heartedly ask, oh, God, do whatever it takes to make me well. Amen. But do I really mean that? No, I'm saying, God, do whatever it takes to make me well, as long as it doesn't affect me negatively in any way whatsoever. That's the disclaimer. That's the asterisk that the human ears didn't hear, but God most definitely did.
Right. And I'll give you an example. I woke up thinking about this morning. So I am your classically late person. If you set out a time for me, I will find a way to be late. And then I will find a way to say, well, I was doing this, or the traffic was in my way, or this was happening, or this is so-and-so's fault. And I've been battling this for all of my life, but significantly for probably the last 20 years. It harms my relationships. It makes me look unreliable professionally. It has cost me money. So there's every reason for me to let go of this. What I woke up about thinking this morning was, how am I going to live in the tension of being early? Being early to me means something didn't get done, or the dogs didn't get walked long enough, or the children didn't get cared for correctly, or that last minute thing I could have done. I walked into work half an hour early yesterday trying to practice this. It agitates me. I feel like I'm not being the productive, capable person I am. And living in that tension is really hard for me. And what Jerry's talking about of letting go, I resent myself. I resent this whole American culture for being so time-centric. I resent a lot of people around time. For some reason, that feeds me, and I hold on to that because I don't want to live in the tension of being early. And I know how silly that sounds, but it is one of the things that has truly held me back in life on many, many occasions.
Yes, it has.
But that's what he's talking about, having the courage to let go. It seems like such a simple relationship.
It would be so much easier if the American culture would just do it the right way.
Or if they were more of like a South American culture where you get there,
Yeah.
when you get there, you kind of do your
Right.
thing, and the on-time
If
deal.
everybody else would just make themselves well, then I could be happy.
And my children even noticed it. They said to me the other day, the only time that you are always on time is when you go for an airplane. And that's not even true. Sometimes we have run down the concourse trying to get to an airplane. I have only missed an airplane once in my life. That has such a high price tag to it that I make an effort to be there. But I have caused everybody pain and strife doing that, including myself. So why would I not be fully ready to let it go? And that's what I woke up with this morning, is I'm not willing to live in the agitation and tension that causes me to be early. And I'm sure there are other examples of that, of if I'm not drinking at a party, or if I'm not doing what everybody else is doing at a party, eating, the brownies or whatever is going on, then I'm not like everybody else. And so I have to live in that tension that says, I've let go of these things, and how am I going to handle my emotional sobriety while that's happening?
Yeah, so back to this last point that we were talking about, and this last part of the process would be, am I really, honestly, truly ready to have these angers, these resentments relieved from me? If you're like, absolutely, of course, you're not there.
You're really not, because I've said that over and over again, but I'm not, because I'm not willing to do the work to do it.
Yeah, or I don't know that there's work, because in reality, the work is...
The work for me would be living in the tension of saying, I could have put the dishes in the dishwasher and I could have made my life easier at the end of the day, but then I would be late for work.
You envision it as living in the tension. It may be a miraculous recovery. It may be, because the next thing that I have to do is I have to say, okay, in a moment of spiritual vulnerability, I get personal with my Creator, and I say, God, here are the resentments that I've identified. I've helped to set parameters on them. I've tried to be as specific as possible. I am asking that you remove these from my person so that I can be more like you. I can better serve your fellow human and my family, and I can be in this success, that this peace that comes from the removing of these resentments serves as a testimony to those who might choose to follow you someday. And that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for you to fully remove these things so that when I preach your message, it's that much more palatable, because people look at me and they go, wow, that person has something that I think I want. They have a peace amongst them. They have a sense of stability. They have a confidence without arrogance that I admire. I want to know how that person has it. That's what I'm asking God to do. And if you're like, of course, yes, that's definitely what I want. Again, you're not being, in my experience, when I'm doing that, I'm not being firmly honest with myself. I'm not really quantifying how long I've held on to these things. And the reasons that, the reality is we're holding these things because they do benefit us.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And we're back to what I had said earlier in the second episode on resentments. You have to be ready to change your story. So instead of saying I'm a classically late person, I'd have to be ready to change that story and to keep telling myself, this is back to the story you tell yourself, keep telling myself, I can do this. God is with me. I will be able to do this. Because the one positive I can see of me being a late person is our sons are so resentful about it that they will probably be on-time people. You know what the youngest said to me the other day?
But here's the thing. they'll probably be angry at everybody else who's late.
Yes, because of their mother. Because I heard this one story of this boy. It was a comic, and when he was a boy, he said, "My mother was always 30 minutes late. My mother was never there to pick me up from the game. My mother was never there to be there on time. She never showed up with things she was always 30 minutes late to the classroom party when we'd already eaten the cake." It broke my heart to hear that. And the youngest said to me the other day, he said, "You know, Mom, early is on time. Late, or how does it go? Early is..." He said, yeah, early is on time is late, and late is you don't get to be in the play. Because he had a play product for that. Jerry said, other people are watching you. Your behavior is witnessing to other people. That is, for my own sanity, it's one of the reasons to clean up resentments. But the other reason to clean up resentments is to be able to be the person that God made you to be and to be present. And in my particular situation is to have margin. Let's review the tools real quick. We identified, we did a description of what it was. We actually wrote it down. They have proven scientific knowledge that writing it down gets your brain to cue in to what's going on. And then you find the trusted person to share it with, and you share it. Now, this person is not somebody who needs to judge it or fix it. They just need to hear it. And then you take the step of courage and ask for it to be removed.
No. Then you firmly evaluate whether or not you're ready.
Okay. You evaluate to...
Because that is really the most important part. You know, honestly, it's easy. It's not nearly as emotionally exhausting, at least in my experience, as developing a list, quantify or measuring it out, getting specific with it. Why specifically am I angry at this person? What part of my psyche does it affect and threaten? Then making an appointment with somebody, letting them know that this is going to be a time-consuming activity, probably somewhere in the range of 2 hours if you've got a generous and well-thought-out list. Letting them know that this is going to be something you hope that they can remain, in confidence and not share with anybody. Now, this is to me where the rubber meets the road is: am I truly ready to have these things relieved from me?
We're going to leave you with that question. That is a big question, so a lot to think about there. We can tell you from personal experience that letting these resentments go are like taking a 100-pound weight off your chest. It is something that you would never choose to carry with you had you had the ability to process this, and it is a big piece to emotional sobriety and maturity.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else, too. There is relief with every step, every process here. You know, each portion of it you do, I find relief.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest things that we want for you on the Sober on Purpose podcast is stepping into sobriety is not easy. There are more steps that happen than just giving up the action or the habit or the use of something that was keeping you numb. These are the steps into bringing you into whole life with color and life with joy and life with a range of emotions.
Happy, joyous, and free.
Happy, joyous, and free. Thank you for listening. We look forward to talking to you again.
Bye.
Hey, if you've got a minute, we would love a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Be sure and join the conversation over in the Facebook group, facebook.com/Sober on Purpose. We also have the tools written down in a blog. So join us on thejoyousfamily.com/resentment, and you will find our blog there with the tools actually written down. Thank you so much for listening.